She walked into the room quietly, dressed in a plain outfit with soft colors, her hair loosely tied back, no flashy makeup, no designer label in sight. To most people there, she looked like someone who didn't quite belong, just a simple woman in a room full of glamour, gossip, and high-end fashion. Whispers started the moment she stepped in. Some chuckled behind their champagne glasses, others exchanged smirks, and a few didn't even bother to hide their judgment. Her smile stayed, gentle and calm, as if she didn't notice. Or maybe she just refused to react. As the evening went on, the comments grew bolder. A woman at the bar laughed loud enough for her to hear, saying, "Who let the help in?" Someone else made a snide remark about her shoes, calling them vintage in the worst way. The quiet woman didn't say a word. She just stood near the edge of the crowd, watching, waiting, her eyes scanning the room, not looking for approval, just someone familiar. The mocking continued, and though it wasn't loud, it was constant, the kind of slow sting that can wear someone down over time. But she stood tall, like she knew something they didn't. Then, the room shifted. A tall man entered, dressed sharply, confident, with an ease that made people turn. All eyes went to him. He was clearly someone important. And when he walked right up to the quiet woman, took her hand, and smiled like she was the most beautiful person in the world, the room fell silent. And then, with warmth in his voice, he looked around at everyone and said one simple word that changed everything. Queen. But what happened next wasn't just surprising, it was unforgettable, because in that moment, the room saw her differently, and what he did next, well, you'll want to stick around for that. The man standing beside her was Daniel Morgan, a successful entrepreneur, well known for his sharp mind, calm presence, and growing influence in business circles. People had seen him at events like this before, always surrounded by polished company, usually women dressed in gowns that turned heads. But no one had ever seen him like this, holding someone's hand so gently, looking at her like nothing else in the room mattered. That simple word, queen, echoed in the silence. But it wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it. Like it was the truth. Like he meant every bit of it. The whispers changed tone. Now they weren't mocking. They were confused, curious. People leaned in closer, trying to recall if they'd seen her before, trying to place her. But no one could. Some assumed she must be from some quiet wealth. Others thought maybe she had a story no one knew. Because there had to be something, right? A reason someone like Daniel would treat her with that kind of reverence. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't imagine, was how far back their story went, and what this moment really meant to them both. Her name was Lily. She didn't grow up with money, didn't care for high society or the games that came with it. She preferred bookstores to ballrooms, long walks over fancy parties. She had spent years supporting Daniel before anyone even knew his name, quietly helping him through failures, working night shifts while he built his dream, holding him together. When everything around them was falling apart, no one in that room knew the sacrifices she had made. To them, she was just a simple woman. But to him, she was the reason he ever became someone at all. Still, not everyone in that room was ready to accept her presence so easily. One person in particular was watching them closely, with eyes full of something darker than curiosity. In the far corner of the room, near the marble column, stood Victoria Langston, flawless, elegant, and clearly unsettled. Her eyes never left Lily and Daniel. She had known Daniel for years, had shared stages with him at fundraisers, and had always assumed she was next in line for his heart. After all, they moved in the same circles, spoke the same language of wealth and ambition. So seeing him so tender with a woman like Lily, someone she considered forgettable, felt like a quiet insult she couldn't ignore. Her lips curled into a practiced smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Victoria wasn't the only one feeling off balance. Even Daniel's old college friend, Marcus, was caught off guard. He had always seen Daniel as a man with a clear path, sharp. Suits, smart deals, and a future with someone like Victoria, someone who fit. Marcus didn't understand this version of Daniel. The man who had once talked numbers and growth charts now looked at a woman with soft hands and gentle eyes, like she was his entire world. It didn't make sense. And when things don't make sense to people like Marcus, they start looking for cracks. Lily felt the weight of the room pressing in, but she kept her posture calm, like she'd learned over years of being underestimated. She knew how these people thought. She'd served their coffee, mended their clothes, taught their children. They didn't see her as someone who could belong, because they'd never had to. But tonight, things were shifting. And that made people nervous. There were quiet conversations starting in pockets of the room. Assumptions, judgments, whispered stories trying to make sense of what they were seeing. But someone wasn't just whispering. They were planning. Because, for a few guests, this wasn't just gossip, it was a threat. And someone, somewhere in that room, had no intention of letting Lily stay in the spotlight for long. The music in the background shifted to a slower, softer tune, but the tension in the room only grew heavier. Daniel leaned in to whisper something in Lily's ear, and she nodded slightly, her smile small but real. It was the kind of moment most people would overlook, but not tonight. Too many eyes were watching. Too many egos were bruised. Victoria moved gracefully through the crowd, each step quiet but filled with purpose. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was gentle, but sharp, like a knife wrapped in silk. "Oh, Daniel," she said sweetly, "you always did like surprises." She glanced at Lily, pausing just long enough to let the insult sit before turning back to him. "It's just, we were all expecting you to come with someone a little more familiar." A few people chuckled softly, nervous laughter, unsure which side to pick. Daniel didn't respond. His silence was louder than anything he could have said. He just held Lily's hand tighter, and for a moment, it looked like he was about to say something. But Lily stepped forward instead. Before she could speak, though, a waiter brushed past, nearly spilling a tray of drinks at her feet. It seemed accidental, until it happened again 5 minutes later. Subtle gestures, tiny mishaps, all aimed at her. A napkin with a cruel message, left near her seat. A snide whisper disguised as small talk. Someone had started a quiet campaign against her, and it wasn't just Victoria. More people had joined in, some for amusement, others for power. They weren't just mocking her now. They were trying to push her out. But Lily didn't move. Her eyes scanned the room, not with fear, but with quiet strength. She knew something was coming. She could feel it. And as Daniel turned to face the crowd, lifting his glass for a toast, all eyes locked on them. The room held its breath. Something was about to happen. Just as Daniel raised his glass, about to speak, a voice rang out from near the entrance, loud, enough to cut through the soft hum of music and conversation. "Before the toast, maybe we should all know who's really standing beside him." The room turned sharply. It was Marcus. His expression was calm, but his tone carried something, heavier, an edge that made Lily's stomach turn. He stepped forward slowly, holding a phone in one hand, his eyes fixed on Daniel. "You don't mind, do you, old friend?" he added, smirking slightly. Daniel's jaw tightened. Lily stayed still, but her hand trembled slightly in his. Something had shifted again, and this time it wasn't a whisper or a sideways glance. It was public, direct. "Everyone here's wondering," Marcus continued, his voice now smooth, deliberate, "how a woman who used to clean offices for a living ended up here tonight, on your arm, at our table." A few gasps escaped from the crowd. Lily's past, something she never hid but rarely had to explain, was now being dragged out under the worst kind of spotlight. Victoria watched closely, a half smile on her lips. This was exactly what she wanted: doubt, division, discomfort. And Marcus had done what she couldn't. He made Lily look like a stranger to this world, someone who didn't belong. But that wasn't the twist. Marcus turned the phone around. "You all remember Daniel's investor pitch 3 years ago? The one that turned everything around?" He swiped the screen. Turns out, Lily wrote the original draft. Every word. The room fell silent. The silence wasn't out of respect. It was confusion. Shock. That kind of detail wasn't in any press release, wasn't in any of Daniel's interviews, and now the question wasn't just about who Lily was. It was how much of Daniel's success belonged to her, and why that truth had been hidden until now. For a long moment, no one moved. Daniel slowly lowered his glass, his expression unreadable. Lily didn't flinch. She didn't deny anything. Instead, she stepped forward, her voice calm but clear. "Yes, I wrote it," she said, meeting Marcus's eyes. "Every word. But not because I wanted credit. I did it because I believed in him." The room stayed quiet, as if the air itself was waiting to see what Daniel would say. He looked at her, not with surprise, but with something deeper. "I never told anyone," Daniel began, turning to the crowd, "because I thought people wouldn't understand. They'd assume I was weak for needing help, or that her brilliance somehow took away from mine. But the truth is, Lily has been the strongest part of everything I've built." He looked out across the stunned faces. "She's never asked for anything, not even this spotlight. But maybe she should have had it all along." Whispers rippled through the guests, but it wasn't judgment this time. It was recognition. Lily wasn't just some quiet woman in the background. She had been the force behind the curtain, the partner who never needed applause to give her best. And now, with the truth finally out, the room saw her clearly for the first time. Victoria's smile disappeared. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, realizing too late that his attempt to embarrass Lily had only elevated her. But just as things seemed to settle, Lily turned to Daniel and said, "There's something else they don't know." Her voice softened, but it held weight. "I wasn't just behind your pitch. I own the rights to that first prototype, the original one. I registered it in my name before we ever had investors." Daniel blinked, stunned. The crowd held its breath again. Suddenly, this wasn't just a story of loyalty or love. It was a story about power, real power, and who truly held it in the end. The silence that followed Lily's words was unlike any other moment that night. It wasn't filled with judgment or curiosity. It was respect. True, quiet respect. Even Daniel, who had always carried himself with quiet confidence, looked at her now with something new in his eyes. Not just admiration, not just love, but recognition. He had always known she was the reason he stood where he was, but he never imagined the foundation was hers in a legal sense, too. Victoria quietly stepped back into the crowd, her presence suddenly less important. The moment she had waited to seize was gone, and now eyes that once followed her were fixed on Lily. Marcus offered a brief, awkward apology before slipping out, realizing he'd only exposed his own envy in the end. Daniel took Lily's hand again, firmer this time. "Whatever I built, it started with you, and now everyone knows it," he said softly. Lily nodded, not for pride, but for peace. She hadn't come to that event to prove anything, but sometimes the truth has a way of rising, even when you're silent. The rest of the evening shifted completely. People came to her not with pity or pretense, but with genuine curiosity, asking about her work, her story. Some even asked for her advice. For the first time, she wasn't the woman behind the success. She was standing in her own light. And Daniel didn't just stand beside her anymore. He stood slightly behind, proud to let her lead. As they stepped out into the night, away from the glitter and murmurs, Lily took a deep breath. The air felt different, lighter. The kind of feeling that comes when truth finally replaces assumption. She had been mocked, doubted, and nearly pushed out. But, in the end, she walked away not just as someone's wife, she walked away as the queen she had always been.